Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, August 5th, 2024. Time for another show. We are rolling through the games of the 33rd Olympiad. Yes, so that's still ongoing in Paris. And everything apparently going swimmingly, including swimming in the Seine, which apparently is relatively disgusting, and, well, we'll have to wait and see what the health effects, if any, are on any of the people swimming there. The mayor of Paris drew the unenviable job of having to get in the water to prove, I don't know, supposedly to prove that it was safe to do so. And I guess she didn't dissolve or die instantly, so that was supposed to mean everybody can swim, you know, whatever, I don't know how long they have to swim for these things in the Seine, but presumably it's longer than the dip in the water, like the, I don't know what you would call it. It's the I guess instead of the polar bear plunge, this is the brown bear plunge, I guess. And you jump in and just say, you know, there is no fecal matter on me right now, I don't think. But, you know, chemical tests awaiting the results. Good luck to all who had to deal with that. I would have switched sports at that point, but anyway, I mean, really, yuck. But lots going on here where there are no Olympics, but plenty of Olympians, but we've sent them over there, and so we're all having a good time being good at sports while all the good people are overseas. We're now the best in the country, so this is terrific for us. And I guess just the same, all of the internationalists have been shipped out of Britain and over to France for the Olympics, and so they are having nativist, fascist riots as well. We'll have to catch up on some of what's going on there. I imagine that's Greg's got it on the radar, as he usually does. When things happen in English, you know, we're able to keep up with those things. But weird scene over there, and some interesting information arising out of it. But once again, I guess the whole thing sort of triggered by misinformation, disinformation. In fact, as a series of attacks and murders that nativist fascists took as an opportunity to blame on migrants, which apparently is not even the case, but it doesn't matter very much to people who are just looking for a chance to riot. But now sort of the source of the rumors traced back to, well, you'll never guess, Russian disinformation people. Fantastic. So they're not busy with the Olympics, the Russians. They are banned for these games, and so I guess they've got plenty of time on their hands when they're not busy losing the Ukraine war. They can sit in the basement of I guess the basement of their mom's apartments or whatever, and put out these disinformation publications and ruin everything for everyone else. So a familiar story there, just in terms of finding Russian disinformation at the bottom of it. As for the rest of the weekend, hell if I know. You ask someone like Greg Dworkin. He'll know a little bit better what was going on. I was sort of lost in the Olympic shuffle, willingly, and diving into all of the coverage there and doing my best to learn how to navigate the Smart TV Peacock app, which it seems to be working just fine, except it keeps offering me an update, so it could be working that much better, but it's so complicated to update my Smart TV because of how much smarter it is than I am, apparently. What they would like me to do is change my password every 15 seconds or so, and as if you could remember it. I wanted to update the Peacock app, but it wouldn't just let me update the Peacock app. I had to enter the brand of my television, which is an LG. I had to enter into my account with them in order to be able to enter my account with Peacock to update it, and I never made it past my account with LG, because at first I didn't know where it was. Then I found the password, and then it said, all right, you've entered it for the first time in a year, but you should now change it, and you should change it every 3 months, which means every time I log into this TV, I'm going to have to change my password, which is, I don't know. It doesn't seem all that smart to me, but it is a TV, and it does seem to work, and it gives me the sports coverage, which is nice. And yes, a note from production staff here, a note that Noah Eagle, the young Noah Eagle, calling the U.S. men's basketball games, which is a tremendous accomplishment. Noah's like 11. He's always been 11 to me. He's a cousin of mine, and after a tremendous success in calling the SpongeBob SquarePants version of the Super Bowl, he's on the ground for the Olympics, which his dad, you may know, Ian Eagle. I don't know if Ian Eagle ever got a chance to call the Olympics or not, but maybe Greg knows, and maybe it's time to talk to Greg because he's here and he knows a lot of stuff. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. I know Ian Eagle. I don't know Noah.
Noah's his son. His 24, 27? Oh, my God. See, this is why, this is one of those things.
27. Isn't Ian Eagle 27?
Right, yeah. Ian's 30. So, it's difficult to imagine. And, of course, Noah's always 11, in my opinion. This is one of those things that in your family, kids never grow up. You're 70? Yeah. That's amazing. I was just at your bar mitzvah.
Somebody was pointing out, I have not been watching the Olympics. I just like to see the medal count and who won and all that stuff. And then the clips of the highlights. That's always fun.
Yes.
But somebody pointed out the best thing about the Olympics is
someone should tell
the decathlon.
The IOC. You like that, huh?
Because you get to see these big, strong guys who can throw boulders across the continent.
Yes.
And then you watch them in all the events that they're not good at. So you watch them run.
Yeah.
That is just so much fun.
It is fun.
It's
and
I can do that.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it?
I can keep up with them on that one.
As it turns out, some of those guys who are like, well, you're great at throwing the shot put and a couple of other things, but now it's time to sprint, and they get left behind.
You can chuck a spear. You're a good spear chucker Jones. You can do all those things. And then you have to run, or then you have to swim.
But you see them. Don't swim in the Seine. You don't want that. But you see these guys run
swim every other day in the Seine.
Good. No thanks. They get smoked in the 100 meters or something and left there. They're not even on screen when they finish. Now, if you stop and rewind it and then take a look and get their time, they lost. They lost by 5 seconds.
It was like he sucked, but it was good
they
enough
would
to
have
win.
Killed
that
you.
just makes you feel like I could be there. I totally
the thing.
Relate to that.
As it turns out, they still actually regular humans lose to that guy by 5 seconds. As it turns out, so
who doesn't?
Quite
lose?
A thing.
100-meter people.
Right.
It's just incredible.
Well, it's an 8-way tie. Which is terrific.
All of them
nearly
under 10 seconds. That's just phenomenal.
Yes.
Even forgetting about
the
incredible finish.
Yes. And somebody did point out that
guy
I think
starts last and finishes first, but all of them were fantastic.
Well, he started
and
at
as
the
one of
same
the moderators or observers was saying, the funny thing about this is that all 8 know they can win.
Yes. And they believe it. And
in any other circumstance, they would have.
Yes. Also pointed out that all 8 finishers, I think, finished faster than Carl Lewis's 1988 win.
That's what I'm saying. It's incredible.
It keeps getting faster.
But one of them was fastest of all, and therefore gets the title.
Sort of. Yeah. And what a finish. That'll learn you some rules. There's a procedure story in that. Like they did the photo finish and you're like, that guy won. I can see his orange shoe across the line before anybody.
No,
nope.
It's not the body part that counts.
Yeah, right.
It's the clavicle.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting too. It's like, it's a foot race though, right?
Where's the clavicle? I was running races. I didn't go to anatomy class. What the hell are you talking about?
And sometimes it's just a matter of, and they work on this, this is how technical the race is. You need to be able to be in a certain part of your stride at the end of the race so that you can be leaning forward. So your feet can be back, but your chest needs to be forward. And if you're in the wrong part of your stride and you're just about to lean, well, you just lost the race.
That's all good. That's all true. But maybe you should work on getting out of the blocks faster.
Oh, yeah, right. There was some good starts there, too. I'm surprised they didn't have any false starts. That I saw. Maybe they edited them out of the replay.
Yeah. Anyway, great race. But then again, the pool, these people can run. These people can swim. They can jump.
Yes.
They can high jump. High jump and get sidetracked by other things.
Yeah.
You heard about that one.
And which one is that?
The high jumper who hit the high bar with the wrong part of his body?
I didn't see the men's high jump. I saw the women's high jump.
The pole vault, I think it was.
Pole vaulter. What? Oh, no. Yeah, there's a lot of bad parts of the body. You can hit a pole.
His knocked off the pole.
Oh, really? Well,
really.
I can go home and brag about that.
Internet sensation.
That thing is 19 feet in the air.
Loses the Olympics, but wins at home.
Yeah, really. Trust me, she'll like it too. The old, what's that commercial for? Nugenics. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, that's all interesting. But that's, that's.
I missed that. I'm going to look for that.
You got to look for that.
Hey, everyone loves it.
We have people from like St. Lucia winning their first medal ever.
Oh, yes.
We have people from Ukraine winning a gold medal after being kicked out of their country.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff happens at the
Ukrainians are competing everywhere. They're in diaspora because they've been invaded. And
can't train there.
I'm noticing a lot. I was watching the women's high jump. The women's high jump.
That's what I was thinking of.
Well, the actual Ukrainian one. And then I think the competitor for Cyprus was, pretty, they didn't say, but the name, I think she might be Ukrainian too, and just said, well, I gotta get out of here. My house has been destroyed. So no backstory though. That's the sort of thing you usually hear about. And maybe she ran away earlier.
We're all Ukrainian now, my friend.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay. So Ukrainians taking home gold in the middle of all this. It's a good thing that Russia's not here.
And it was a woman who couldn't train at home consistently for reasons.
Yeah. And lots of people training abroad, and and a lot of people training in the United. A lot of these people go to U.S. colleges and universities, compete in the NCAA track.
So can I point something out here? This is like 15 minutes of fun discussion. Involving Donald Trump.
Right, true, because everybody hates Donald Trump, and bringing him into the picture
not talking
ruins
about
it all.
Him was the best part of the Olympics. Like everybody's focusing on that.
Yeah,
If the Yankees,
he is grumbling about the Olympics.
The Olympics, you have something.
Just no one cares.
You don't have to talk about that.
It's good news.
But the excitement in the race, of course, is not Donald Trump. There's just some amazing reporting going on between then and now. Biden's only been out for like 2 weeks.
Right. But it seems like
everything has changed.
Something.
I sent you Nate Silver's, but 538 has the same thing. I sent you Nate Silver's prediction of who's likely to win.
Oh, dear. Okay.
And you could see, as he put it, the streams are crossing right out of Ghostbusters.
Okay.
See the red line and the blue line there?
I'm looking. There we go. Oh, that's a stock market. There we go. Okay. All right. I see they're coming together. What's happening?
Well, so Harris now has a slight lead.
Hey,
you have to remember with these predictions of who's going to win, 65-35 is essentially a tie. In this, because the probability. What does it mean? 55-45 chance of winning. That's like even odds.
Okay, I got you.
We're not talking about polling. We're not talking about a 10-point lead in the polls.
Oh,
so Harris looks like that has like a 0.00073% lead over Trump in the who's likely to win. That's not the point. The point is where she came from to get there for the last 2 weeks. I see that now.
And this is just the last 2 weeks of this chart. Wow. I mean,
it has to be.
It has the same shape as
before that
the long-term chart. That's true. But I mean, if it had just been Democrats and Republicans, I feel like the chart would look the same even long-term, which is great because it's a little fractal of itself. And now that means we can extrapolate some future results. I can't past performance predict future outcomes.
The polls are changing. This is G. Elliott Morris over at 538. Current Harris versus Trump polling averages from 538. We're not doing real clear politics because they're putting their thumb on the scale more than usual. They're refusing to add polls that show Harris up so that their averages don't change.
Well, that does seem real clear, doesn't it?
Right. They are the Rasmussen of aggregators, but not the Scott Rasmussen of aggregators, because Scott Rasmussen's polling firm, RMG, is very different than Rasmussen Polling.
Oh?
Scott Rasmussen left that firm 10 years ago and turned into a legitimate straight pollster.
Huh.
Whereas the Rasmussen poll is like a Russian troll farm.
Well, that seems
really
like
interesting.
He should have protected his IP better.
Harris is up 1.5 points. Michigan Harris is up 1.8 in the aggregate. Wisconsin, Harris up 1.3. Pennsylvania, Harris up 0.5. Nevada's even. Georgia, Trump's up by 1. North Carolina, Trump's up by 1.3. Is that real? Well, Trump is spending money in advertising in North Carolina. Arizona, Trump.
People need killing. Okay.
Well, so the point is
Arizona 2.
that everybody's so accustomed to saying that Trump is leading that when Trump is no longer leading, they keep saying it. It's like when they used to say George W. Bush is popular way after Bush was no longer popular because that's their narrative and they stick to it. So you could say, well, over-rational exuberance about Harris is masking the idea that Trump is still ahead. He's ahead where?
Arizona.
That's about it. But if you look at the national polling, Harris is ahead. If you look at who's likely to win, Harris is ahead. Yes, but I found this other place that said Harris isn't ahead. Well, you're missing the point here. You're just trying to cherry pick to justify your old narrative. Yeah. This is only 2 weeks into Harris's election campaign.
Yeah. And she's slightly ahead in that state where they shot the other guy.
And we got some events coming up here. So the event for today and tomorrow is picking the vice president. Lots to say about that.
Yeah.
But it's one of the events that focuses you away from the Olympics. And Trump isn't even on the screen anymore. I don't know if you recall, but he got shot at.
Yes.
Like, who cares, you know?
Right, yeah. Well, boo-hoo. How long you want to dine out on that? Come on, guy.
Is your ear healed?
Yeah.
Good.
All right. I know you're not. We're supposed to be more concerned about that, and we were previously. Now we're done.
Well, you know, the fact that
America needs to move
turns out
on.
to be a right-wing nutjob that shot at him, you know, is part of the equation.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do?
It's
root
not
for him?
Good. It should be a story that we allow this sort of hate to fester, but then again, Trump is the one that's promulgating it.
Well,
and he continues to do that.
It?
He had a wacko rally in Atlanta where he couldn't get as many people as Harris did in the same venue. And what he did is basically say they stole the election in 2020. They're going to steal it again in 2024.
Oh, but
Get ready. We have to fight back. You know, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Inflammatory, incendiary language. But why is he doing that? Because he's losing. He knows what the polls say, and it isn't just what the polls say. So, yeah, change your narrative. The whole Trump campaign is basically falling apart. That doesn't guarantee a loss because 50% of the country will vote for Republicans regardless. But, you know, in a general year, it's a 50-50 country. But the campaign, which thought they were sitting on top of the world and had the luxury of picking J.D. Vance, realizes they blew it. And Chris LaCivita, the campaign manager, who, by the way, was the swift boat for Kerry guys.
Okay.
Back in the day, posted a picture of, I'm having a senior moment on the Gangster show.
It was a picture of
James Garofalo, you know.
Yes. The Sopranos.
Middle finger out. Civita said to my critics.
Oh.
This is the campaign manager.
Okay.
Right, posting a picture of a gangster with his finger out, saying to his critics, this is for all my critics. In other words, he's under tremendous criticism and pressure for the fact that he built a campaign around Joe Biden and has no plan B. And it's obvious that they don't know how to attack Harris properly.
So here's the finger.
When I say properly, I mean in a way that actually garners votes. And they're turning on him.
All right. I mean, they ate the last
That's
manager.
the word from the Trump campaign. They are not happy. They realize they're losing. And it's bad for them. And which, of course, is great for America.
Yes. USA.
Yeah.
I can chant that. That'll help us. Yeah. I mean, what can I tell you? He should have asked the last manager, did they eat your face? They did. I remember that. Actually, I ran back to Texas and stayed there. And you're the campaign manager because what happened to the other one? The previous one, the one that I don't know. He's gone.
Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita were splitting the duty there.
Yes. And I'm not talking about the
remember,
river saying
they were terribly professional. They were good at keeping Trump away so that media could talk about Biden's age. They were doing everything right. Everything changed. Were they nimble? No. Were they ready for this? No. Did they know it was coming? Yes. Did they have a contingency plan knowing it was coming? No. What does that say about leadership? You tell me.
Yeah. Well, bring back Brad Parscale, I guess. He's busy in the men's high
Not Brad
jump.
Parscale, the other guy, the one who assaults women all the time.
Oh, Corey Lewandowski.
That's the one.
Yeah. He's
because Trump wants people around him,
vault.
that he trusts and likes.
Right.
And, the people telling him to shut up.
He rehabilitates people every so often, too.
So every night on Truth Social, he's out there ranting. And this is not an attractive look, and it repels voters and reminds them why they didn't like him in the first place. And that's what's going on. So let's give you some thoughts about this. I told you about the G. Elliott Morris stuff.
Yeah.
So here's a new one this morning. Harris 46, Trump 45 from the TIPP poll. That's a Business Insider poll.
Right.
Tends to lean conservative. Certainly you could tell that from the write-up. Harris ahead now, but that doesn't mean anything because under the hood, it really means Trump is much more popular.
Oh, yeah.
Harris 44, Trump 42, RFK Jr. 7. He's not getting 7.
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr. is the guy that dropped the dead bear cub in Central Park and tried to frame a biker for it. And that's not even a story because, who the hell cares?
That is definitely, there's some very weird, growing up in the oligarchy mental problems for RFK Jr. But yeah, I kind of sort of got the explanation, but there was a good half of the day where it was like, I don't know what's happening, but apparently JFK Jr. put a dead bear cub in Central Park.
You may recall when Kennedy talked about the fact that his nanny or whatever was suing him. I forget the exact details there because I really don't care about RFK Jr.
I don't even think I know that one, but okay.
But at the time, he said, this is just one of many things that's going to wind up coming out.
Yeah.
He was right. And who cares?
Millionaire playboy will do dumb things.
He's a Trump guy. And it turns out in the polls, he takes more away from Trump than he does from Harris.
Yeah, that's why everyone tolerates him.
That's why everybody in the Trump campaign tolerates him.
Well, they don't want him to take away from
the question is, since he's very close to the Trump campaign, what's he going to do? Is he going to drop out? Is he going to stay there? Now that he's hurting Trump, what happens next?
Yeah.
And so that's the only interesting part about the RFK Jr. story. Nothing else really is.
Fair.
This is from Greg Sargent this morning. Surprise poll reveals a key Trump weakness against Kamala Harris. A new survey finds Harris substantially ahead of Trump among Latinos, a sign she may be rebuilding the Democratic coalition, which is essential for defeating Trump.
Well, one
of the biggest unknowns, he writes,
about
Kamala Harris's presidential candidacy. Will she successfully reconstitute Democratic coalition?
Sure.
With Donald Trump's surprising persistent strength among non-white voters, which may not exist because it's starting to vanish in the polls.
Mm-hmm.
The case for optimism among Democrats has been that Trump support among these groups is soft, inflated by factors like inflation itself and President Biden's deep unpopularity, rendering them ripe for recapture. Now a new poll, apparently the first large sample poll of Latinos since Harris became presumptive Democratic nominee, provides fresh grounds for that optimism. It finds that Harris holds a nearly 20-point lead over Trump among Hispanics in the battlegrounds, a surprisingly large expansion of Biden's ailing support among them, and that her candidacy has room to grow that lead, suggesting she may be putting back in play Sunbelt states that appeared lost under Biden, particularly Arizona, but also Nevada.
Okay.
Harris leads Trump by 55 to 37 in the head-to-head, which sampled 800 Latinos across Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina. Those are the 7 that you have memorized as the swing states, and you should because they are.
Right.
The survey provided to New Republic in advance of its release today was conducted July 23 to 26, well after Biden stepped aside.
Mm-hmm.
And it dovetails with other national polls finding similar advantages for Harris among Latino voters, but significantly the larger Latino sample size in the survey, commissioned by the voter engagement group Somos PAC and conducted by Latino poster Gary Segura, provides a stronger basis for confidence. She enters as the nominee with a very strong lead among Latinos.
Excellent. Okay, right. And the 7 states also are the ones that had fake electors.
The 7 sisters, yep.
Yeah.
So neither of the Democrats' 2 leading vice presidential hopefuls has a substantial advantage among the others. Shapiro is viewed favorably by 31. Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, 33. Waltz was not tested. Percentages of Latinos have no opinion of Shapiro or Kelly. So that's where things stand there. And we'll do most of this after the
Kelly
break. So now we turn to she's campaigning with them tomorrow.
Who?
So is she going to announce it today?
She's campaigning with them. Who's them?
The vice presidential choice that she's made after interviewing everybody over the weekend.
Yes, okay, but we don't know who it is yet. But
we don't know who it is yet.
That person will be there with her.
That person will be there with her. Will we find out today, or will we find out tomorrow? Partially, it's going to be driven by other circumstances not under her control. For example, there's rumors that Iran and Hezbollah are doing something that might bring more war to Israel, strikes on Israel, that is, over the next 24 hours. So Harris is splitting her time between the campaign trail and the Situation Room.
Mm-hmm. She's
so
vice
does
president.
that throw a monkey wrench into her announcement schedule? Maybe, but, we'll find out.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure they can handle both. It just might not be appropriate to try to handle both at the same time. So I'll work around it, and we'll find out who the vice president is.
You could do a video announcement and then spend time in the Situation Room.
Yeah, all right.
So
it's not a bad reminder.
I'm
a powerful person.
He's got 24 thoughts on this.
Well, we have room for one.
The truth is, we have room for the intro, and then we'll get to it.
Yeah.
The truth is, Harris almost certainly knows who she intends to nominate, and no clever assessment of the pros and cons changes her thinking. But what's the point of doing this? Because if this list is helping a few readers clarify their own thinking, well, you're who I ultimately work for. With that said, we'll talk more about this after the break.
Okay. Well, we got plenty of time for it. One day. I assume she's got a pretty good idea of who she, certainly of who she wants.
She knows who she likes and who she doesn't like.
Yes, that's clearly true, and I guess we'll find out more about that. And we're still supposed to read nothing into the fact that it's in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't read anything into it.
Okay, sure. They're just like the bell. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We've picked the vice president, but it's a secret and we can't tell you.
Right. So here's Brian Beutler's thoughts on it.
All right.
So the nickel version, he says, is Tim Walz is narrowly the strongest candidate on her short list, but not by leaps and bounds. Which is to say Brian Beutler, see him as something like best among equals. I also think his loudest advocates misportray what makes him strong and overstate the demerits of Josh Shapiro.
Okay.
That's another way of saying I'm narrowly pro-Walz, but I'm also agreeable. Conditional on none of them having career-ending skeletons in the closet. The whole bench is solid. Harris Shapiro, Harris Buttigieg, Harris Bashir, not bad. Harris Kelly, okay, but astronauts are cool. Harris Whitmer, what's not to like? Harris Warnock, oh, take it. Harris should almost certainly just pick whoever she gets. All that said, I assume it'll be Shapiro. So if you put yourself in the shoes of a Harris advisor, Shapiro's appeal is obvious. Political strategists give risk-averse advice because they don't want to attach their names to daring ideas that ultimately backfire. So in this case, nobody wants to be the person who sells Harris on Walz, which is the progressive favorite which, by the way, in a jujitsu sister soldier move, allows Harris to pick Shapiro and say, I'm not beholden to the terminally online left.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she's going to do that, but the opportunity is there if she wants to take it in some nicer way than the way I said it.
Yeah, well, interesting too. And I mean, the adoption of Walz as the favored candidate of the, I guess, extremely online left is pretty amazing too, because I'm sure they'll come away saying, we tacked right to try to look reasonable. I mean, there's nothing crazy about Walz at all. And they could have said, you all thought we were going to advocate for AOC, but we said Tim Walz because we're reasonable. And that's a very reasonable choice. But, sometimes you just don't get it for reasons that are beyond your control. Like, I mean, if they had more electoral votes in Minnesota than they do in Pennsylvania and it was on the bubble, you'd be right.
Right. So I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to do J.V. Last, the case for Josh Shapiro.
Okay.
Because this is basically a case for Walz, but don't panic if it's somebody else.
All right.
Running mates, he says, can clearly hurt a campaign, see J.D. Vance, much more than they can help a campaign. But rigorous, dispassionate analysis suggests a good running mate can give a ticket a tiny edge, maybe 1%. Actually, the numbers are 1.7% in a home state.
Okay.
Which, when you're a 0.5 lead, is enough to win. Pennsylvania could very easily be decided by less than 1%. Ergo, that's not the same thing as argo, screw yourself.
Yeah.
Ergo, the consequences of not picking Shapiro was large. If she picks Shapiro, I hope lefties with large internet profiles won't immediately revert to treating Harris the way they treated Biden in an effort to punish her. Shapiro and the party and the country and the world by spoiling the fun that's making the coconut pill appealing to marginal voters. I don't think Shapiro's left-wing detractors are by and large motivated by anti-Semitism. He really has been more rhetorically antagonistic to anti-Israel protesters, even if substantively there's almost no difference between them. And I would add, by the way, he's been far more critical of Benjamin Netanyahu than anybody else in the VP race.
Is that right?
Basically said he's tantamount to being a war criminal and he's ruining Israel, and he's right on the money on that.
Well, I don't know anybody
he just doesn't like the protesters.
Yeah,
guess what? America doesn't either.
Well, there is that. Yeah, so I mean, can't complain about that as a position. I don't know. At the same
time, I think the critic's making a big miscalculation by imputing negative policy consequences to his potential candidacy, or imagining there's much more to be gained by teaching the rest of the party a lesson. He's a VP. Yeah. Harris basically makes the decisions. Yes. Meanwhile, if Harris picks somebody else, approximately nobody in the party will interpret it as punishment for being pro-Israel. As Chris Christie, of all people, points out, some of Shapiro's success is probably attributable to the good fortune of running against Donald Trump's GOP. Okay. Does he win in a landslide if he's not running against Doug Mastriano? As a reflection of both experience and campaign optics, I like that as State Attorney General, Shapiro defeated Trump's most aggressive big lie litigation, but notwithstanding all the above, if I were Harris, I would still view Walz as a better option. So the progressive case for Walz tends to boil down to coalition unity. We don't like Shapiro. We do like Walz, so pick us, and that way, we're together. And I think that what we've learned since the Puma years and the Bernie Bro years is you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm talking about J.V. Last in a different piece.
Okay.
He says the left sees Shapiro as further evidence that the Democratic Party is moving toward the center and away from progressivism. 8 years ago, a Democratic socialist almost won the presidential nomination. The year 2016 looks like the beginning of a progressive evolution, and today it looks like a high watermark. If you prefer a more progressive Democratic Party, you may find this suboptimal. As a colleague told me on our Slack talk to J.B. Last, Shapiro being self-consciously centrist, putting a couple of Republicans in his cabinet, talking about welcoming the support of Republicans for Shapiro, joking around with Tim Miller, who's a very prominent never-Trumper on the bulwark. That's just normal, intelligent behavior for a Democratic politician in a swing state. For the left, still smarting from Biden's win in 2020, it signifies the future of the party that disappoints them. The squad was supposed to be the future, or at least orthodox progressives were. Shapiro pick and Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, et cetera, signifies a lot to them, and the left never trusted Harris anyway. Now, over on the bulwark, a progressive poster put it this way: The Democrats have been constantly trying to expand their base to crowds like the Bulwark Center. Ours, they're dangerously close to trying to become so much of something to everybody, they'll be nothing to nobody.
Okay.
And J.B. Last says, I want to validate this concern. Since 2016, the Democratic Party has been moving to the center, but also they have no choice. This is the important part. And I'm going to say this slowly because it's like everything. The fact is the Electoral College currently makes it possible for Republicans to win the presidency with as little as 47%. Democrats can't win unless they're over 51. That's reality. And until this reality changes, Democrats are going to have to keep moving to the center, and progressives are going to have to keep compromising on policies that are important to them. Is that fair? No. But that's the world we live in.
All right. Well, if Democrats have to keep moving, here my suggestion is you don't have to move politically if you move to Wyoming. That's the thing to do. Everybody go move to Wyoming and the Dakotas, and then the Electoral College will be warped and weird against the Republicans. It'll only take about 500,000 people to do it.
Years and years. The deal was you ran to the left or right in the primaries, and then you run to the center for the general.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know how to say this politely. It's still true.
Oh, okay. I was getting
at least
ready.
In the swing states.
When you say, I don't know how to say this politely, I think I have to be ready to give you the horn. But okay, I see what you mean.
What'd you think I was going to say, you moron? That's bullshit.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
But it's true.
Yeah. Well, that's why you were going to say it.
You want to make your case on the internet and get more followers. Lots of people are in the latter category, not me. I don't really care. You want to follow me? Fine. You want to listen to me? Fine. You want to listen to this show? David cares.
Yes. I have no control over national politics, so I'm just opting for the big following.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like you to listen to the show. But look, you got to run to the center. You don't have to like it. I'm the anti-William F. Buckley, right? I want the leftist-most candidate who can win.
Yes.
But who can win is the operative part of that sentence.
Right. That's true. So it's usually not Lieberman.
So if that means
that's not bad.
Well, Lieberman in Connecticut was the ticket.
Yeah.
Well, right. And Lieberman nationally, before he started to become an incredible jerk, was more a plus.
Yeah, he seemed like a pleasant-ish guy, and it was like, well, he's acknowledging a simple truth here. Bill Clinton was not great.
Yeah, true.
So he was right. You're worse? Oh, well, not yet.
And that's what people thought about Hillary, and that's why she lost. Yeah. Harris is in a completely different universe here, which is a wonderful thing.
She hasn't got that
So all
problem.
of this is impacting on your choice of vice president. We haven't mentioned Kelly. Kelly has a lot of pluses, right? He plays the man card. He's an astronaut. He's a veteran. He shoots guns. If you're trying to avoid a Democratic inter-party battle, everybody likes him.
I guess.
The downside is he's not that exciting. He's a terrible attack dog. And, if people liked, the wonderful, calm demeanor that who is he? Tim Kaine would be vice president.
Yeah, that's true.
That didn't work.
No. But
so
astronaut.
You want somebody who can fill a stadium, and you want somebody who can attack J.D. Vance, but you also want somebody who's not going to hurt your party. And so that's why it's, I think, Walsh versus Shapiro. But Shapiro wins in my head, and Walsh wins in my heart. And they're all great, and there's no bad ones. And I don't think it's going to be Pritzker, and I doubt it's going to be Pete, because, what does he bring? What state?
Indiana.
Well, he
doesn't really.
But not really.
Yeah.
I mean, Michiganders, I don't see him as a Michigander.
Right.
He's not bringing the Upper Peninsula with him?
No. I mean, nobody can win the Upper Peninsula.
So I
not
think
even Republicans
Walsh
really
or
win it.
Shapiro is my guess, and Kelly's third, and I don't know who's going to win. It could be any of those three. Those are the three she interviewed yesterday, and it makes sense to me it's going to be one of them.
Okay.
Now, is that correct? Could she pick somebody else altogether? Could she just turn around and pick the least likely senator you could possibly think of? Mitt Romney or Tommy Tuberville? You never know. But, and then for the sake of unity, you suck it up and you vote for her anyway. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be one of those.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it's starting to look like. And, all right.
We'll know by tomorrow, certainly, and maybe
calling
even today.
that it could be an Eagles fan is very difficult for me to understand. But, everybody has their drawbacks.
Right.
So, okay.
So, again, how is the Trump campaign nimbly reacting to all of this? They're melting down. This is a piece in the Washington Post by E.J. Dionne from today. Okay. Trump seems to forget it's not 26 anymore, and he's frustrated. After 9 long years, his old way of campaigning just isn't going to cut it. And so just as Harris isn't Hillary, Trump isn't Trump. It's just not the 2016 election all over again, no matter how you would like it to be.
He's not that young anymore. He's, well, all of that is true. The conditions have changed. He's older. I don't think he wants to admit that. That was the core of his campaign against Joe Biden, so he can't admit that.
Yeah. The bottom line is we've been here for 9 years, and a lot of people would just like Trump to go away. Yeah. The best way to do that is to vote for Harris. That's why Jeff Duncan, the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, is voting for Harris. Oh, and by the way, not only was Trump unhinged and fomenting violence in that Atlanta rally.
That's usually true.
He attacked Brian Kemp viciously.
Who's that?
Very popular governor of Georgia in a state he needs to win.
So he went to Georgia and attacked the governor of Georgia.
The popular governor of Georgia.
Republican
the highly popular governor. He's got like a 63% approval rating.
All right. Yeah. So he's very mad because Kemp wouldn't sign on with his...
Kemp and Raffensperger.
Right. You wouldn't cheat to steal the election for me, and now I have to go around accusing other people of having stolen the election as a result.
Right. Because in Trump's mind, Kemp is the governor and Raffensperger is the secretary of stealing elections. And they wouldn't do it, and he's really mad at them.
Well, they hate you, and you should look inward on that, but he doesn't do that. So, yeah, he spent the time attacking them there. I don't know how that went over with the crowd because, well, you never know because the crowd isn't there to listen to the speech. They get very bored very early.
Yeah, they're there to party.
Yeah, and shoot Trump occasionally. I mean, it's low statistically speaking, but that's the other activity that's most popular at Trump rallies, other than leaving early. So, they're bored. I didn't see any discussion of reaction to the attacks, just how irrational that they were and how dumb and dangerous by themselves. But there wasn't any reporting that I saw of the crowd, pointedly did not applaud. But they're tuned out. I don't think they hear what he has to say by that point.
Right. Oh, by the way, I just have to throw this in because she's wonderful. She's the goat.
Right.
So somebody asked Nancy Pelosi this morning or yesterday what she thought of the J.D. Vance pick.
Okay.
And she laughed and said, I think it's wonderful.
It's true. Now I'm not telling you why. I'm just telling you I think it's great.
Yep.
Yeah. My dad called yesterday to tell me, by the way, we should be pronouncing it properly. You should be referring to him as J.D. Vance. And just checking my Yiddish there and saying Vance is the way you ought to be pronouncing V-A-N-C-E. But
you got to say that at least once.
So
you can say it the other way all you want to, but at least once you got to say it like Vance, J.D. Vance.
Vance. Well, Vance, I guess roughly translated, it should be alert Brett Stevens. I'm about to say something, but Vance is a bed bug. Or, more colloquially, an annoying a-hole, Vance. But I guess you would transliterate it as V-A-N-T-Z. But at any rate, it's close enough. J.D. Vance, bed bug. And you know how they are about being called bed bugs. Really gets under their skin. Okay. So, not bad. And I'm looking at the picture here, by the way, of Josh Shapiro. Not, you could pass him off as an Eagle family relative. He could be an Iron Eagle grandparent or uncle.
Yeah, you have to listen to him, though, speak. He not only sounds like Obama.
Yes, you do.
He's very good.
You have to listen. Let me be clear, right? Yeah, he doesn't say that, but I did listen to I think the clip did you point to a clip?
Yeah.
Or somebody else did. But yeah. All right. Oh, and my mom weighs in to say Vance means cockroach, but I have seen bedbug as the translation. So it's out there, and
just generic vermin.
Yiddish disagreement there. So in Belarus, it probably meant bedbug, but not in Ukraine. So maybe that's it. Where were we? Josh Shapiro. Oh yes, right. Yeah. Well, okay. So so we don't know when the pick will be announced.
Cockroach. Exactly. What part of Eastern Europe are you from?
Exactly, right. You can tell which one is. I think of it as mosquito. Oh, all right. Well, so you're like Crimean, where they had mosquitoes.
From that part of.
Yeah, you have to be down on the water and the warmer weather, etc. I'm from Murmansk. Vance means icicle in your bedpan. Oh my God. So who knows? It could mean anything, but it's not good. And I don't know. We'll see whether it works or not. But right now, J.D. Vance doing enough to burn down his own brand. He had another rough weekend, and a lot of the worst time ever to unearth his criticism of Simone Biles, which was just incredible. And she got back at him. And did you see this? I think I saw it by Friday. Maybe you didn't. You weren't on, so I couldn't share with you. But that she had used her Instagram account afterwards, after winning 5 million gold medals, posing with her medal and posting, "I love my black job."
Yeah, which was fantastic.
She's tuned in. She's winning Olympic gold medals, and she is watching.
Not only just winning the medals, but she's like telling people, stop putting the microphone and trying to interview the people that just lost.
Oh,
Let them
that's
leave
rough.
them alone. Let them enjoy the games and let them
take that picture.
Collect themselves first. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, she's a big advocate for athletes are people, and don't crush them all the time.
Yeah, and the other thing that you should never, ever do, she said, is as soon as you win, ask them, okay, what's next? Like, you don't even give me 5 seconds to enjoy what I just did.
Well, those are the
like
Disney
that guy
people
that won the 100.
Oh? Did they ask him what's next?
No, but I'm saying,
it's the 200 is the
let
answer.
him savor the fact that he's the world's fastest man.
I think he savored that pretty good.
For a moment. Stop asking him, okay, what are you going to do next? You know what he's going to do next? The 200. Just go away.
Yeah, he's going to run around the track with a flag. Although I noticed they didn't get him a flag fast enough, so he took off his...
Well, nobody's fast enough. They probably tried to get him a flag, but they couldn't catch him.
Yeah, right there.
He's the world's fastest man.
No,
Wait, Flash, wait, you forgot your thumb drive.
He's walking around with his, he had his penny off, and but has his name on it. So he's running around with his name up there, and they're like, well, that should be a flag. Let's get him a flag. Now athletes bring their own flags in their backpacks, which I think is interesting. I'm going to win, so I'm going to bring one.
You know who wore his flag as a cape, which was really fun? Pommel Guy, also known as Clark Kent.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, he won his gold as well. That too was a big sensation. I'm amazed that he does that routine without the glasses and without contacts, but I guess maybe at some point it's better I don't want to see anything. I
don't want to see the
see where my hands are. That's
enough.
The
signs. I just want to do my thing.
Right.
And he's great
in
at
a bubble. Oh my gosh, is he ever? And it's great that he's, I love the look. I love the fact that he was so good that they said, we're just going to carry an extra gymnast who only does this.
Yeah.
What confidence. So good luck.
Worked.
What's next? We'll
it
ask
was a brilliant
him when we
decision
see him.
in retrospect.
Yes. And one of the chief viral athletes of the games, along, of course, with Simone Biles, who was always going to be a viral. And my kids, this was amazing. The kids who are tuned out from everything, and they don't watch TV anyway, and you can't get them to watch it, but it doesn't matter because it's not TV anymore. You got to stream the Olympics. Their exposure to the Olympics is there's a shooter, a Turkish pistol shooter, air pistol shooter, who's in the mixed team event, who has gone viral because it's a very highly technical event, apparently, and many, if not most, if not all, of the shooters have technical gear that they wear, high-tech eyeglasses with, zoom lenses and one thing to cover the non-dominant eye so you're not distracted, and all kinds of crazy balances and counterbalances. And this guy comes in, well, essentially, it doesn't hurt that the Turkish team uniforms look like T-shirts that someone has written in Sharpie, Turkey, on it, and he has none of the equipment. And he has an interesting stance. He shoots with one hand in his pocket, Like he's just casually assassinating you.
Well, you know.
And it was huge.
He's also got 2800 vision.
Yes, apparently. And, so he just sort of, while others have all sorts of weird rituals and everything, he just apparently is a walk up, shoot, and leave kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was very...
You're hired, man. I know exactly what you're good at.
Right. So that guy, by the way, if MBS tries to get somebody to go to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and that guy is waiting outside, watch out. Maybe your plans are being foiled. But everybody loved that guy. There's like fan art, anime fan art about the guy, and they have a whole like cinematic universe developed around him. So anything could catch on.
I'm going to digress and give you an interesting example.
Okay.
Which says as much as anything else about how Shapiro is appealing to the middle.
Okay.
There's a poster whose name is "Don't Inhale Virus." I don't know what that means, but it's conservative.
Well, don't. Okay.
And writes, Josh Shapiro, who may end up as Kamala Harris's running mate, campaigned in 2022 against COVID protection such as masks and vaccines, even claiming they had been a mistake.
What?
Now, apparently he's doing this as a gotcha. And conservative Mary Catherine Ham retweets him and says, y'all keep pointing about stuff he was right about.
That's interesting. The right-wingers think, yeah, but he was right about that. I don't know that he did that. Maybe he did. And I don't know in what context he said
it
this,
doesn't matter. It's stupid.
That's funny.
The point is, that's all they got. So that's one of the reasons why they don't like running against him.
It's interesting.
Like, what are we supposed to focus on? Half the stuff he did, we're okay with.
Right. He's distributing Russian disinformation, which I love. Okay, well.
And progressives are saying to themselves, you see, that proves my point. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that proves my point.
Yeah. Why are you all so right about this? That's interesting. It's making it difficult to unravel all of this. I guess I'll take a look at some point, except I don't want to look at this person's link about why they think they're right.
The other thing that's difficult.
I'll have to Google it, yeah?
And you have to step back and say, do I really want to pay attention to this or not?
Yeah, maybe not. Why don't I wait for the pick?
Is, you step back and think about this, okay? When Biden was running, before he had stepped down, but after he was already in trouble, just before he stepped down, Steve Bannon.
From jail,
or just before he went into jail.
Okay.
Said, I told the Trump campaign, you better be prepared for Biden stepping down because you don't want that.
Did he tell them, though?
The worst thing in the world would be is if he steps down. Biden stepped down. It turned out to be the worst thing in the world for them.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is when you hear from MAGA that they like this or they don't like this for Democrats, you generally ignore them. But sometimes it's right on the money. And word out of MAGA camp is they don't want Josh Shapiro because he's the hardest for them to run against.
Okay. Well, at some point you wonder about whether they're,
of course,
running the influence block.
But still, sometimes they're right.
I guess, like right here.
Like right here, and that's why I thought
That's why you brought it up. Okay. I knew that. Yes, that's true. You can't ever really tell with these guys, and I guess you really have to. It helps if you know the players a little bit.
Well, let's go with a Ronald Reagan. Trust but verify.
Yeah, I guess so. Mary Catherine Ham might be. I don't know. Yeah, she's. No one knows. Don't inhale virus. There's no way to evaluate that person.
If Mary Catherine Ham and people like that wind up in the end saying. Oh, and this is worth mentioning, too, in the last moments we have on the show, for me.
Ever.
If she winds up voting for Harris, that's great.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean
tell anybody.
I have no idea, but I'm just saying those things matter. So, in that regard, this is the Sarah McCammon is reporting this. The Harris campaign announced the launch of Republicans for Harris.
All right.
Including
everyone does that.
Endorsements from more than 24 prominent Republicans, some of whom you may have heard of since you spent time as a congressional staffer at some point in your life.
All right.
This morning, Harris' campaign announced the launch of Republicans for Harris, among them former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel.
I remember him.
Former Governors Bill Weld and Christine Todd Whitman.
Wow.
Remember, Weld ran as a third party at one point.
Yeah, right. So he's an iffy guy. But Christine Todd Whitman, only
Stephanie
one party.
Grisham, Olivia Troy, Ray LaHood, Jim Edgar, Christine Todd Whitman, Jeff Duncan.
Grisham was a Trump White House person, right?
Yeah.
January 6th, parachuted out.
And a long list of former congressional people: Rod Chandler, Tom Coleman, Dave Emery, Wayne Gilchrist, Jim Greenwood, Adam Kinzinger, John LeBoutier, Susan Molinari from New York.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember her.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Quinn,
Funny.
Denver Riggleman, Claudine Schneider, Christopher Shays,
wow.
Both sides Shays from
Holy
from
moly. Wow.
Peter Smith,
Both
Alan
alive
Spielman,
and dead.
Dave Trott, Joe Walsh.
Where's this list?
I just sent it to you.
Oh, where
Mesa,
did you
Arizona
send
Mayor
it?
John Giles, former GOP State Chair
Oh, my goodness,
Chris Vance,
Okay.
Reed Howard of Young Republicans for Harris, former RNC Delegate Rena Shah, and more.
Okay.
I think that's going to be a thing. I don't see Liz Cheney's name, but I would welcome it.
Yeah.
And for
that's
those
a
of
good
you who are
point.
giving the Never Trumpers a hard time, look at this list. You know, go after the wavering Republicans who are still supporting their candidate, not the Never Trumpers.
Okay, yeah, they're out there, and some of these are important names. And I mean, it's been a while since a lot of them have been in Congress, but they are people who have been there. I do recognize a number of those names.
Like Chris Shays.
Sure, yeah. Almost all of those guys. Claudine Schneider, Susan Molinari, Denver Riggleman, just because that's a hilarious name, and he's from Virginia. And
Yeah, but he was on the January 6th committee.
yeah.
He agreed to.
And Kinzinger. So those guys I recognize,
Kinzinger's
and I
leading.
recognize their motivation. The others are just like, oh, I guess they realize that, you know, it's the end of the world if Trump gets reelected.
It's the end of their party.
Yeah. Well, Christine Todd Whitman, yeah. Okay. She's an easy get on things like on anti-Trump stuff, but it doesn't really do anything so far, but I think maybe this time it will. It won't be her doing, but we'll take it. How's that? Okay. So New Jersey in the mix, Connecticut in the mix. And it's not all Northeastern though either, right? Riggleman is Virginia, and weren't there some Westerners there? Yeah, Mesa, Arizona mayor. Got it. Joe Walsh. Oh my God, you lie, Joe Walsh?
Could be.
Oh my goodness.
He's a Never Trumper now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll take it. He no longer lies, I guess. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. As Greg was making his exit, he sent me one more thing, which I guess updates one of the previous items, although it is not directly connected. We here at Kagro in the Morning are bringing our political acumen to bear to make it relevant and connect two stories. What he has sent me is the AP's story with the headline, ordinarily boring headline, of Hospitality Workers Union, and apologies to unionists and hospitality workers both, but generally speaking, most people will think of that as relatively, boring or whatever, but not us, because we're politicos and whatnot. Hospitality Workers Union endorses Harris, dismissing Trump's pledge of tax-free tips. That was a play for them and for wait staff in restaurants, and we're going to make your tips tax-free, and I don't know why. I mean, everyone loves to get money tax-free, but although when he announced that one, I think most of what I heard from restaurant workers, etc., was they'll find some way, the bosses will find some way to steal this tax-free money from us, and they'll structure it in such a way that, or they'll tell people that most of our regular base pay is now a tip from the, they'll manipulate the rules. So they probably never believed that they were really going to get much out of Trump anyway. And besides which, they're basically saying, even if it were true that we actually were going to get our tips tax free, everything else is so much more horrible that nothing makes up for that. And so, thank you, but no thank you. We never believed that Trump would deliver on such a thing anyway, or that people would be able to resist stealing that money from us later. Plus, he's going to ruin the world, so no thanks. Well, why is that? What's that connected to? The Hospitality Workers Union endorses Harris, dismissing Trump's pledge of tax-free tips. Well, heading back into Greg's Raft O stories, where he brought us way back in the early part of the last hour, G. Elliott Morris's tweet about the current Harris versus Trump polling averages from 538. So how's your political acumen, everybody? What's the connection here? Nationally, Harris plus 1.5, right? But then individual states. And which states were they? Remember, they were largely the states that had sent, for the most part, it was states that forged where the Republicans forged electoral votes and sent them because they were the swing states, the battleground states. So Michigan, Harris plus 1.8. Wisconsin, Harris plus 1.3. Pennsylvania, Harris plus 0.5. Nevada, even. And then Georgia, Trump plus 1.0. North Carolina, Trump plus 1.3. Arizona, Trump plus 2.0. So what does this have to do with anything? Hospitality workers. Hospitality Workers Union endorses Harris. That will decide the largest county. It's Clark, right? In Nevada. You may recall the way things seem to work in the general election in Nevada is the hospitality workers who work and make all of the casinos and hotels and everything else that goes along with it. I don't know if the wedding chapels are unionized or not, but Las Vegas runs on hospitality workers unions, period, and they control the turnout in Clark County because there are special voting rules, because these hospitality workers, though they may come from all over the state and have long commutes to get where they're going, i.e. Las Vegas, to serve you while you're there, they all get to cast their votes regardless, more or less, of where they live in Clark County because they recognize, at some point, Democrats probably sponsored the bill to allow them to do this so that they could vote while they were at work without having to race home. They can't get back home in time to be in line to vote at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whenever the polls close in Nevada. I wish I knew that offhand. Although it seems to me like here in Virginia they close at 7 p.m. and that seems early. A lot of places are 8 p.m. But try making it off of work. Can I get time off at 8 p.m., which is nobody's eating, drinking, or gambling at 8 p.m., right? Can I just go home and I have to leave at 6 in order to get home to get in line in time to vote? No. Anyway, hospitality workers unions will more or less control the destiny of Democrats in Nevada, and I think those two things are connected, and you should take it that way. But at any rate, wherever you live, Greg's message is doesn't matter when you got to get there in time. But if you think it's really close, but if you make it there in time and if your polls close at 8 o'clock and you get in line at 7:59. Universally, the rule is supposed to be, now there'll be Republicans will show up and try to tell you not only can you not have food or water, but you have to leave because the polls close. Don't believe it. If you're in line before the polls close, you are entitled to vote. Don't forget that. I don't know how many people listening are thinking of going at the very last minute to vote. Probably none, but there are probably people you can tell. Or if you've got nothing else to do and you've cast your vote and you've worked all day knocking on doors and the polls are closing and you live near a polling place that's crowded, you might consider dropping by and around closing time and telling people who are in line to vote, don't leave. The polls aren't closed for you. You're in line. You're allowed to stay. So maybe that's the thing you could, if you live near the polls and they're really super crowded all day, maybe think about going by at closing time and maybe even bring a printout of the information or the state law, the state statute for that matter, and pass out those sheets as long as you're outside interestingly, you're not allowed, of course, to hand out literature past a certain point, and they will just assume, poll workers will probably just assume that whatever you're handing out must be political literature, but what you're really handing out is copies of the state statute. I don't think that's really politicking, but I wouldn't risk it. But if you're at the right polling place where there's lots of people in line, they'll be in line past that whatever number of feet barrier from the door anyway. So hand it to those people. It's not food and drink. And you're right, and I think it's defensible in court as well. So what I'm telling you is, if you're very excited and you have nothing else to do for the evening, why not go risk arrest outside? You know, for the most part, I'm sure you will be fine. But you'll be doing a great service to people. And if your polling place is not crowded, but you can reach a polling place that is crowded, maybe you want to go there. All right. Well, at any rate, I do think that, the Hospitality Workers Union endorsement, not that we had any serious doubt about it coming around, but I guess there was this point of contention about the pledge from Trump, which, by the way, probably a lie. I mean, remember what you've got in your hand here is a pledge from Trump. Most famous for breaking his pledges, especially when it comes to money, especially when it comes to, certainly when it comes to his money. But if it's about putting money in your pocket, that's probably not going to happen no matter where it's coming from. But a pledge of tax-free tips, right. Take a pledge from Trump to the bank. Take a pledge from Trump to Trump's bank. They don't even believe it. So, I wouldn't put great stock in it. No one should. And, of course, any union really toying with the idea of endorsing Trump. Sometimes the Teamsters do that. Don't. It's foolish and stupid, and your rank and file will probably defy you. Whereas the hospitality workers unions in Nevada, probably not, because they kind of run the state. So there's your connection there. All right. Other stories to share with you. There are plenty. Let's see. I'll go remind myself of what I meant to share with you. Some of which is parked in pocket. Some of which I just thought about sharing with you, but didn't make any formal declaration about it by sharing it on social media. Sometimes it makes sense to scroll back on a Monday and take a look. All right. So lots of, information to share. One of the things I put aside, though, a couple of articles about the riots that are going on in Britain because, one, it's in English and we can understand what's going on. Two, it's important. And I've seen a lot of commentary about it that I think we ought to share. First of all, in terms of what's going on, I've got a CNN, the basic CNN article about, hey, here's what's happening. Although I picked it up from some commentary about what's happening, then maybe it would be better to share that. So I could start with the New York Times, which no one loves, but they also, they're daring me to read or not read their article, which is got the title structure that I hate so much. Britain's Weekend of Violence. That's not so bad. I mean, they did have that. Britain's Weekends of Violence, what we know. And I thought it was, or maybe it used to be. They have been changing their headlines a lot lately. I thought it might have been what you need to know, which oh, God, again with this, but there's such an arrogant way of titling things. What we know. That's even better because that suggests some humility, i.e. the New York Times saying, I don't know if we know everything. Maybe we don't. So that would be a refreshing break. Here's what they know. The country begins a new week on edge after anti-immigrant riots fanned by disinformation from the far right broke out in cities across Britain. So context for that, of course, they're just putting the disinformation story right out there. I was going to try and connect that for you with an entry from No More Mr. Nice blog, as we've done in the past a couple of times. Also of note, Empty Wheel, Marcy Wheeler out there commenting on the situation and as well and saying, I will just frame the whole thing here before we even read the factual story. The riots in the UK, she says, are modeled on similar actions to the Dublin riot in Ireland. They did the same thing, orchestrated by the same people. They're happening as much because Labour won in a landslide as because of the violent attack that they were supposedly in protest of. This is an interesting point I'll connect in just a second. They're happening before Starmer begins the work of trying to fix housing and health care. In other words, she's saying basically that these riots are as much calculated, to fan the flames of anti-immigrant sentiment and exploit it as they are to make it as impossible as the right wing can make it for the left wing or left-leaning government to govern and solve the problems. In other words, sort of a Steve Bannon type project to undermine the ability of the administrative state to do anything, and then to be able to point to that and say, see, they can't do anything good. We might as well abandon liberal democracy. It's not worth anything. We won't let it be worth anything, is essentially what this all comes down to. There's a couple more tweets in the thread from her. If government struggles with violence perpetrated by low hundreds of thugs, it'll be much harder to get to fixing healthcare and housing. That is, the fascists are aiming to make governance impossible because they're using terrorism to make government weak. This fascist movement is multinational. It relies on both visible and invisible networks mobilized by social media, with a very significant U.S. role. I hope wardens in Danbury are watching Steve Bannon's communications closely. Where it's not succeeding at the polls, it will use terrorism to discredit governments. Now, it did not succeed just recently at the polls in the UK, and nonetheless, they are trying to flex this muscle that they really shouldn't have. And they are being valiantly opposed by anti-fascists turning out all over Britain to counter-protest and prevent the riots from damaging their targets in many cases. So that is all quite admirable as well. I was thinking about it this morning and saying, they just had the French elections, and now, of course, they're hosting the Olympics, the most international event ever, and they really could have embarrassed, I guess themselves, but also sort of the internationalist movement in general. Had the elections gone the other way, they would almost certainly have felt empowered to, I guess, who knows what, hang out outside of the athletes' village and harass brown-looking countries on their way to and from events, things like that. That could have been a serious embarrassment. And I was saying, well, thank God, but for many reasons, thank God that the elections didn't go the right wing's way in France. What a mess they could be making of it. But on the other hand, then you just say, well, over in Britain, where the elections also went the right way, in terms of empowering the far right anyhow, you nonetheless have this. But of course, you have the catalyst of the Black Swan event, I guess, of these horrific attacks, and so they'll latch on to anything or make things up if they have to, since they're doing both here. But the elections went the right way in Britain, and still they're having this attack. And so I guess it's just maybe it's also helpful that I'm sure there's very heavy-handed police presence all over France because of the Olympics, and maybe that has discouraged that activity as well. So, at any rate, just something to think about. And Marcy always on the ball here and calling out the possibility that Steve Bannon, evil incarnate, from prison, able to do this stuff anyway. Maybe you got to watch out for this. He's got a network that can handle this. So here's the New York Times reckoning of it, what we know. And here's the deal. It is no byline on this, just the New York Times. It's one of their constantly updated pieces. After a weekend of violent uprisings across Britain, set off by a deadly stabbing rampage and an anti-immigrant disinformation campaign that followed it, tensions are high from the streets to government leaders' offices. Here is what we know, which may be more or less than what you know, about as the country enters a new week of uncertainty. Where has the unrest taken place? Protesters over the weekend took to the streets in dozens of cities across the UK, most of them in England, the English part of the UK, right? Trouble broke out from, oh boy, I'm going to be pronouncing things wrong, I'm sure, Aldershot in the south to Sunderland in the Sunderland if you're still Saxon, but Sunderland maybe in the north, and Liverpool in the west. Belfast in Northern Ireland was also drawn into the fray. In some cases, the protesters were merely unruly, but in others, the violence was far more pronounced. Here is a map pointing out where else they have had disruptions. Let's see. Things that we know how to actually say. Manchester. So, Leeds as well. Nottingham. Yeah. By the way, where was the sheriff? Nowhere to be found. Out collecting taxes, and he had nothing to say. And a couple of other places that we probably can pronounce as well, but, I'm not doing shout-outs to rioters. On Sunday, rioters... I will do a shout-out to the anti-fascists of Bristol, who made the papers internationally by showing up in force, outnumbering the right-wing protesters and protecting their target from damage. So that was terrific. That was a great example of local counter-organizing that I saw held up as an example. On Sunday, rioters set upon a hotel that has housed asylum seekers in the town of Rotherham, maybe. It's R-O-T-H, like Rotherham, but I'm sure it's probably something closer to Rotherham. In northern England, breaking windows before surging inside as the police struggled to control them. It remained unclear whether any asylum seekers were actually staying at the hotel at the time, and no guests, asylum seekers or otherwise, were injured in the melee, police said. So that's good news. But and once again, pointing out that while they're rough and angry and dangerous looking, they didn't manage to hurt anybody there. I think they're just sort of doing this half-heartedly, which is fine. And you should kick them in the other half of the heart that they're actually using for it. In Middlesbrough, a group of rioters, some masked, but not because they were afraid of COVID, hurled bottles and rocks at officers. Cars were set on fire, and at least 9 people were arrested. And none of the cars were Teslas that just burst into flame on their own, apparently. On Saturday, a library and a food bank were set alight in Liverpool because everybody hates libraries, as groups damaged and looted businesses, which don't include libraries, typically speaking. And in Hull, fires were set and storefronts smashed in the city center. Nearly 150 people were arrested over the weekend, national police representatives said, and dozens of police suffered injuries, including some that required trips to the hospital, or as the British say, to hospital, or I guess, or I don't know. I know they say you're in hospital when you get there. I suppose the trip is to hospital for them as well. National police representatives. Is that Scotland Yard or is that something different? I always thought of Scotland Yard as like, was that the national police like headquarters? As like our FBI maybe, but national police representatives could mean a national collection of local police representatives. So I don't think they would have missed the opportunity to say Scotland Yard if they had that on their plates. What set off the protests? The unrest began after a 17-year-old wielding a knife attacked a children's dance class on Monday in the seaside town of Southport, which is near Liverpool. 3 children were killed and 8 were wounded. And imagine how much worse it could have been with a gun, but he didn't manage to get a hold of one. But knife attacks, that does happen in England. And I recall that it was some years ago, too, that a similar thing, although this one they did blame on migrants, and I think they were right in that case. But didn't somebody attack a crowd with a knife at or near London Bridge? It was very famous. And even more famously, that person was counterattacked and pummeled by local football fans of, if I recall correctly, Millwall Football Club. Notoriously, well, it is said to be notoriously hooliganish in its fan base, Millwall. I don't know whether that's fair or not to say, but it's something people kind of like to say. And in this case, it worked to their advantage, and it became a viral sensation that the tough football fan guys punched the crap out of the guy who was attacking people with a knife. Well, no such luck here. But the suspect, not a migrant, born and raised in Britain, but online rumors soon circulated that he was an undocumented immigrant, which turned out not to be true. To counter those false claims, the authorities took the unusual step of publicly identifying him. But with migration a flashpoint issue in Britain, especially on the far right, the rumors were all it took. Maybe they didn't publish the information in the correct accent. Extremist groups urged their followers to take to the streets which they're always doing. And the day after the stabbings, they began to do so, starting in Southport. How have the authorities responded? The riots prompted a heavy police response. Nearly 4,000 additional officers were deployed. The Law Enforcement Association said, "Be in no doubt, those who have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law," Prime Minister Keir Starmer said in a statement on Sunday. "I guarantee you, you will regret taking part in this disorder." I like it. Whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves, this is not protest. It is organized violent thuggery. It's like going to a football game at Millwall. B.J. Harrington, the head of the public order for Britain's National Police Chiefs Council, maybe that was the national police authorities they were talking about, said online disinformation had been a huge driver of this appalling violence. And not only that, it was driving on the wrong side of the road. Intelligence teams, detectives, and neighborhood officers, Mr. Harrington said, are working to identify the people fomenting the violence. They won't win, he said. Even as the authorities vow to crack down on the violence, they have long struggled to tamp down on disinformation on social media. One of the accelerants behind the riots, Britain and other democracies have found that policing the internet is legally murky terrain where individual rights and free speech protections, thanks a lot Elon Musk, are balanced against a desire to block harmful material. What are the political implications? The riots are the first political crisis for Mr. Starmer, who took office only a month ago after his Labour Party defeated the Conservatives, who had been in power in Britain for 14 years. While in power, the Conservatives tried to capitalize on public unhappiness over immigration, vowing to reduce it, though they failed to do so. But in recent days, they joined Labour in condemning the violent protests, at least. By the way, not vocally condemning the protests, but expressing his shock at them, but not saying, not shock and dismay, just shock. What's his name? Crap, I already forgot his name. The real a-hole who nobody likes and who ran for, who's been running for office since forever, Nigel Farage. But this time he won, and he actually gets a seat in Parliament. So he used his new platform to say, I'm shocked, but not dismayed. Left that part out about these riots. So, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who's now the opposition leader, said the unrest had nothing to do with the tragedy in Southport. He's right. The police, he said, have our full support to deal with these criminals swiftly. Mr. Starmer held an emergency meeting on Monday, part of an established protocol that brings together relevant government ministers, civil servants, representatives from the police, and intelligence services. So that's the background. I thought I might add, as I said, the commentary of No More Mr. Nice blog. Steve M. is the only way we know him. But you may know him from social media or this long-standing blog. And he had an interesting synthesis of all this. The right will want Southport-style riots in America if Harris wins. That is probably what they would try. So early warning about that. And so got to get together our anti-fascists, both of the showing up to counter-protest the Proud Boys types, which are a little dangerous and dicey sometimes, those guys. The anti-fascists, I mean, in this case. And the more lighthearted veterans of the protests against various organized Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi right-wing marches, who have shown up as the Ku Klux Clowns from time to time, and with big bags of flour to counter the shouts of white power, which they counter with white flour and then throw the flour in the air. And neo-Nazis who love to march in black, I guess, not only hate to be ridiculed, as most right-wingers do, but also hate to be covered in flour while they're chanting white flour out there in clown noses and rainbow wigs and honking horns. Bring back the genius who thought to march along with the neo-Nazis with his sousaphone years ago, playing, along with the stupid march. It was quite irritating to them. And by the way, Medal of Honor for that man, because, Nazis reputedly will turn and try and beat you up. But they were busy parading, and thank God they never did beat this guy up. Anyway, where were we? No more Mr. Nice blog. Yeah, the right will want Southport-style riots in America if Harris wins, and maybe even if she loses. Is this the future that conservatives want for America if Kamala Harris becomes president? And it is a quote from the CNN report about the riots. Let's just get that in before we take our third and final break. Rioters set fire to and broke into hotels used to shelter asylum seekers in northern England on Sunday. As the country grapples with the worst social unrest it has seen in years, the violence was triggered by, of course, the stabbing of 3 young girls in Southport, northwest England, earlier in the week. The far right has seized on and spread a wave of disinformation. Again, the word is correct here, disinformation, including false claims that the attacker was an immigrant, to mobilize anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant protests. Police say the suspect was born in Britain. Now, about that disinformation, it is worth noting, before the fire and fury in Southport, there was a name, Ali al-Shakati. Al-Shakati, the person I guess they were accusing of this, never existed, we now know, but that didn't stop an obscure Russian-linked fake news outlet from naming him as supposed attacker. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show. Here on Net Roots Radio, we got one more segment to fill with this, but I think it's probably wise, given the warning in the headline of this No More Mr. Nice blog post, to get this on the record. Yeah, this is something we definitely want to keep an eye out. This could easily spread internationally. The whole thing was designed to spread internationally, particularly if it's actually coming from Russian disinformation sites. The Russians, probably, if they're actually doing this, it's always weird. It still feels weird to say this way, that the Russians are managing to manipulate this. But I think there's pretty ample evidence now that they've been able to do this, and that their pride and joy in all this is to be able to, take supposedly stable democracies and shake their foundations with just fake crap that they post on the internet. I type it here and it causes destabilization there. What could be easier and cheaper? They love it. So we don't want to celebrate it, but you kind of want to give the warning. So we were reading No More Mr. Nice blog. Remember, the right will want Southport-style riots in America if Harris wins. We told you about what those Southport-style riots were about. Now, how they started. About that disinformation. And once again, before the fire and fury in Southport, there was a name that was being circulated, Ali al-Shakati. But this al-Shakati never existed, we now know. This according to the report from, I think this is from, I better just open it and let you know, The Telegraph, the UK paper. Lauren Sheriff, I guess, not Sheriff, but Lauren Sheriff, maybe of Nottingham, we don't really know, is the reporter on this. But The Telegraph is paywalled, so I, totally subscribe to The Telegraph. But I am thinking it's time to subscribe to The Guardian. Everybody should be thinking about that. Now, about that disinformation, The Telegraph tells us Shakati, has never existed, we now know, but that didn't stop an obscure Russian-linked fake news outlet from naming him as a 17-year-old supposedly Muslim asylum seeker responsible for the murder of 3 schoolgirls in Southport on Monday. Channel 3 Now, a website that masquerades as a legitimate American news outlet. And I think, in most places, Channel 3 not a real channel at all. But anyway, Channel 3 Now a website that masquerades as a legitimate American news outlet but acts as an aggregator for real news stories as well as fake viral claims, published the claim on the back of speculation which appeared to have started on Twitter. They go through the whole exercise of saying X, formerly known as Twitter. But interesting, right? So, I mean, note for the record here, what you're talking about is if it's Russian disinformation or just Russian-linked disinformation, I guess that could mean, well, it didn't come from out of a URL or an ISP, rather, in Russia, but maybe it's paid for somehow through dark money that comes, you don't know exactly what it means, Russian-linked, but this is an American site, I guess. Channel 3 now, or masquerades as an American site, I guess. So I would take a look, except I don't really know where Channel 3 now is. I imagine if you look at channel3.com or channel3now.com, somebody could check that out, but I don't really want to give them any traffic. But it's an American site, or a site masquerading as an American news channel. I'm not sure who's responsible for it or where it's hosted. But it's interesting that in England, why would you, I guess wherever somebody gives you information that leads to you wanting to riot, you will just take it. But I guess nobody in England said, why am I listening to an American news site, or what looks to be an American news site, for information about what's happening here in England? It's almost certainly not the best information about what's going on in England. We only grudgingly print news about what happens in England here in America. Well, anyway, the name that they had made up was boosted by thousands of other Russia-linked accounts before being repeated by authentic Russian state media, which only makes things worse, which just goes to show that once again there's no line between Russian-linked online trolls, and if people start saying, well, they're just Russian-linked online trolls, don't listen to them, official Russian state media will start saying the same thing, because what the hell do they care? There's no difference between official Russian state media and right-wing Russian trolls. They're the same people. So, they're the same picture meme.jpg. You can run for that one. Okay, so the name was boosted by thousands of other Russia-linked accounts before being repeated by authentic Russian state media, which cited Channel 3 Now in its reporting, even though, one, that is known to be a fake site, and two, it itself is probably run by, or at least supplied with its disinformation by, the same people who are now saying, well, it wasn't us that said it, we're verifying it by pointing to Channel 3 Now, and they're American, except they're not American, they're you masquerading as American. The claim was, meanwhile, picked up by far-right figures such as Tommy Robinson, that isn't even his real name, as I recall, founder of the Anti-Immigrant English Defense League, which they spell wrong because they're English, which played a major role in instigating the riots in Southport and elsewhere this week, and notorious influencer Andrew Tate, who's supposed to be in prison in Romania, right? But is, I guess, wearing an ankle monitor in his house in Romania instead. Because, remember, he is everything that you guys say you're fighting against. You're not fighting against misogyny. He's a human trafficker. And you said you wanted to join the right wing to stop human trafficking, except the guy you're listening to is a human trafficker. So, but I guess that explains why you're also listening to disinformation sources. You're very dumb. Anyway, Andrew Tate, who posts about al-Shakati, whose posts about him, garnered millions of views and hundreds of thousands of likes, even though there is no such person as al-Shakati. Yes, Andrew Tate, or Taint, if you prefer, as we're reminded by No More Mr. Nice blog, Steve M., saying, yeah, Andrew Tate, the American-born, British-raised, alleged rapist and human trafficker who lives in Romania and said he converted to Islam in 2022, and I don't know whether he jumped back out again, retransmitted the false story that the perpetrator of this attack was, quote, an illegal migrant. So look out for those migrants, says the American-born, British-raised guy living under house arrest in Romania. All right, good listening, everybody. But it's the involvement of other bad actors, including Russian actors, that concerns me. Riots like this haven't happened in America, even though crimes reportedly committed by undocumented immigrants become major stories in the right-wing press and sometimes the mainstream media. When did this happen in the UK? Just a couple of weeks after a Labour government took power. Mysteriously enough, I guess. Obviously, that just happened to be when the crime took place. It was a particularly brutal attack, and the person charged with the crime is a young black man of Somali descent, but born and raised in Britain, I remind you. I'm sure many of the rioters know that the Ali al-Shakati rumor is untrue and hate British-born blacks as much as they hate migrants. So you'd expect right-wing outrage, but provocateurs seem to want more outrage than now. They want, or more than outrage now. They want riots. And I think they in days past, they could have gotten those riots organized as anti-black riots, but why even bother? Now they can probably even get occasional black British citizens to riot against Muslims and migrants as well. So maybe they figured they were being unifiers here. The global far right doesn't want unrest like this in America at this moment, because it would make Donald Trump and other Republicans look bad, i.e. weird, right? Weird encompasses everything, but weird and bad and dangerous. But if Kamala Harris wins the election, Steve says, I assume the right will seize the first opportunity to make her look as if she has an out of control border, letting in thousands of brutal criminals, right? I assume they'll want her to have to deal with riots like this during whatever limited honeymoon she has as a new president, if they get the opportunity to stir the pot. We already know that if Harris wins, mainstream Republicans, so-called mainstream Republicans, will do everything they can to make her presidency seem like a failure and to make her a one-term president. That's a given when a Democrat wins the White House, but the far right will have its own plans. She'll need to be ready. Probably a wise and prescient warning, and it gives some context to what's happening in Britain and gives us the opportunity to remind everybody what's actually driving these things in Britain, the disinformation, and we're subject to that disinformation just as much as anyone else. All right, let's see. Other stories to share with you. Let's see. We already know about, of course, the upcoming vice presidential pick. There's a couple of background stories we could read more about there. I did put aside a story just to explain to myself, and I guess I'll provide it to you as a link as well, explaining the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dead bear story. If you haven't heard it and want to hear it, but I mean, there's a story, but in terms of like an explanation, like, oh, okay, I mean, that sounded stupid at the outset, but now I know what he was thinking. That's not there. It's just, it stays stupid all the way through. I mean, how could it not, right? But in case you haven't read it on well, if you haven't read it on purpose, maybe you want to keep not reading it. But anyway, I'll give you the opportunity to make the choice for yourself. Something else crazy that Trump did over the weekend, because that's the bread and butter of this show, although we should probably cut back on carbs. Trump congratulates Putin. Remember, do not congratulate. He defied that one too, right? It was a specific warning to him from his advisors and State Department, et cetera, right? When he stole his election, Putin in Russia, do not congratulate. All right, screw you. I'm going to congratulate him. Well, now he congratulates him again. Now there's nobody advising him not to congratulate because he doesn't have, foreign policy advisors and the State Department doesn't care what he does. But Trump has congratulated Putin once again. Why? For what, you might think? Well, you might have forgotten already, but Trump is congratulating Putin on making what he calls the better of the deals in the prisoner exchange that brought home the Wall Street Journal journalist, among many others, and whose name I still haven't taken the time to be doubly sure I'm pronouncing correctly, but Evan Gershkovich. So Evan's at home. And yes, some brilliant scenes of his arrival home, and I think we mentioned it on Friday that he, I guess, came in by military jet, reunited with his mom at the airport. Biden and Harris there to greet him because they're important American officials and they're not going to ignore their business here. If Trump were the guy, I mean, he might have placed himself at the welcome home ceremony, or he might have gone golfing instead. I mean, it's 50-50, just in terms of these are moments where the American president is supposed to be there and play a role, and it's just not, you just can't be sure that Trump is going to do that. And then if he is there, there's this great picture of Biden and Harris waiting to greet him, or maybe they just have, or whatever. And his mom runs out of the crowd. I guess it's all arranged, I'm sure. You know, you can get through the security tape. You're the mom. We've cleared you. And runs in and just jumps into his arms, and they hug. And now that he's back at home. And Biden and Harris, I don't know whether they've already greeted him or they're waiting their turn, whatever, but they're standing aside, smiling and watching and looking on at this great scene. And Trump just could never, I'm sure, just how could he wouldn't stand aside for anything. He would have inserted himself between Evan and Mom, and probably would have tried to lean in and get a kiss out of him. Don't you want to kiss me for getting your son out? And it would have been weird and gross. And we don't even need him to do it to know that he's weird and gross. We would make up a story about him being weird and gross just to satisfy our urge for hearing more about how he's weird and gross. Anyway, this actually happened. Trump congratulates Putin over deal that brought Evan Gershkovich home. Trump also seemed to lash out at the deal. He's angry about it. After it was trumpeted on Thursday by President Biden and Vice President Harris, who met the freed prisoners in an emotional ceremony. In fact, the picture I'm thinking of is illustrating this piece right here. There they are. Biden looking on smilingly at the emotional scene. I'm sure Republicans were cropping the photo and saying, look at Biden. He's so old. He's not even looking in the right direction. He's looking away from the whole thing. Well, he's not. He's looking at the right stuff. Josh Dawsey's piece in the Washington Post, though, is what we're reading. Former President Donald Trump congratulated Russian President Vladimir Putin at his Atlanta rally, the unhinged one that Greg told you about. The other unhinged thing he did there was congratulate Putin over a prisoner swap that took place this week, saying the Russian strongman had outsmarted U.S. officials as part of the largest such deal since the end of the Cold War. Of course, it was an enormously complex deal, as we pointed out last week. Trump would not even have attempted it, but certainly had he attempted it, he would have ruined it. It would never have worked. But Trump was counting on Gershkovich being released to him by Putin as a gift to him, as a congratulations for his re-election. And then it didn't happen. He said nobody could get Gershkovich out but him, and then Biden did get him out. So he was very angry about that. And he congratulates Putin and suggested that Putin outsmarted the U.S. officials because Donald J. Trump is on the other side, ladies and gentlemen. He's been nominated for the presidency of the United States by the Republican Party, which used to be the most anti-communist, anti-Russian everything, but now is pro-Russian for whatever reason. And Donald Trump congratulates the other side in a prisoner exchange with the U.S. That is quite weird and treasonous. But we have problems calling it treasonous here, because then the actually we're a republic people come out to point out, no, you have to have two witnesses. Well, now you have that. Well, it has to constitute levying war against the United States. I understand that. So we'll call it lowercase t, treason. But Donald Trump is on the other side in a prisoner exchange between the United States and Russia. He's rooting for Russia in all this. At a rally on Saturday in Atlanta, Trump did not mention any of the American prisoners who were released in the deal. Maybe he didn't know how to pronounce their names, and I can forgive him that, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who was in prison for more than a year on charges that the U.S. government has denounced as fabricated, but I guess Trump thought was real. In his previous comments on the deal, Trump had not mentioned any of the prisoners by name either, only criticizing the U.S. government. I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made another great deal. We have 59 hostages. I don't even know what he means. I never paid anything. Also don't know what he means. Boy, we make some horrible, horrible deals. It's nice to say we got them back, but does that set a bad precedent? Trump said. Honestly, I have no idea what he's talking about. He did not mention any of the other U.S. officials who worked on the deal for months. He doesn't know their names, of course. In fact, Trump authorized an agreement, by the way, or it is said, in fact, Trump authorized an agreement to pay $2 million to North Korea. Why? To pay the medical bills that they said Otto Warmbier had amassed in receiving care in North Korea over however long they were holding on to him. Remember this? So I never paid anybody anything. Now, hold on. That may be true. But he agreed to pay $2 million to North Korea, as they describe him here, the comatose University of Virginia student sent home from Pyongyang in 2017, the Washington Post reported. Trump claimed the bill was never paid. This is how he brags on it. I told them I agreed to pay $2 million, but then I said, screw you, North Korea. I see how that could be good, but I also see how that could be what a scumbag you are. But I don't really know if I care whether or not the North Koreans trust you. But you were in love with Kim Jong-il. Have I got the right Kim? Now I sometimes forget which one we're dealing with. But he wrote me the most beautiful letter. I promised him $2 million, but then I screwed him. All right. I guess that's something. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said this week that no money changed hands in the latest prisoner swap. And I don't think it usually does. But weird. Now I understand where the idea of cash came from. It wasn't that Trump confuses prisoner swaps with Major League Baseball trades. It's that the last time you made a prisoner exchange, there was cash promised. You may or may not have paid it. It's interesting, though. We are sitting here flat-footed was it ever paid? I don't know. How do you track that stuff? There may be no information on it. But I guess it would be interesting to know, just for the sake of the record, does Trump go around promising to pay $2 million and then just not release it? And I don't know what to make of that. Maybe that's good on balance. Although it does remind everybody, don't trust American presidents when they promise you things, or at least don't trust Donald Trump. And that would at least be a good lesson. Trump has been reluctant to speak about Gershkovich for about the first year of the reporter's detention, because that would, I don't know. He didn't want to criticize Putin, probably. But he finally called for his release in May, when he thought he could engineer it as his own triumph. The former president has repeatedly bragged about his close relationship with Putin, but also says that Putin respects him and would have never invaded Ukraine if Trump was president. Of course, he had already invaded Ukraine in 2014. We keep leaving that out of the picture for some reason. But there you go. I think that's also interesting, right? He's bragging about his close relationship with Putin, and he finally got around to calling for Gershkovich's release, but only to him, by the way, of course, he spent the whole time saying, sleepy Joe Biden, he's so old, he can't do anything. And what was Biden doing? Not only engineering the rescue and relief of the Democratic Party in the upcoming election, but negotiating in a 6-country deal to get this whole thing done in ways that Trump couldn't even imagine figuring out how to approach. On several occasions in recent months, Trump has said he would get Gershkovich released as soon as he was elected in November, and Putin would do it, quote, for me, but not anyone else. So that's clearly untrue, and that's kind of embarrassing for him. Trump seemed to lash out at the deal on Thursday after it was trumpeted by President Biden and Vice President Harris, because it was a success, who met the prisoners at Joint Base Andrews in an emotional ceremony. Just curious, because we never make good deals at anything. But especially hostage swaps, which they're not hostages. We have them because they're criminals. Russians say the same thing. I guess the idea is we're supposed to believe. I know it's hard to believe sometimes. The ones we're holding are criminals and we're right. And the ones they're holding saying they're criminals, they're lying about for propaganda purposes. But I think that's actually true. And they really do take prisoners as hostages. We want to get one of our criminals out of their jails. Well, we'll just grab a traveling American, Brittany Griner, Evan Gershkovich, whoever they can get and say, well, we're going to keep them forever, or we might even execute them unless you give us our prisoners back. But anyway, only Trump believes them, I guess, and says, we never make a good deal at anything, except when I make those good deals, which I don't make. So our negotiators are always an embarrassment to us, he said on his lonely little social media thing that exists for him to put out press releases. Gershkovich was among 24 people freed in an exchange of prisoners involving 7 countries. Imagine Donald Trump even getting one other country to agree. Russia and Belarus on one side, and the United States, Germany, Slovenia, Poland, and Norway on the other. So, by the way, all the gold medals going to the side that was on our side here, United States, Germany, Slovenia, Poland, Norway. None of the gold medals going to Russia and Belarus because both are banned from the Olympics at the moment, in case you were wondering where the international community is on these guys. On the Russian side, 16 prisoners were released, including one who had been imprisoned in Belarus. German and American citizens and Russian dissidents were among the group, the majority of whom were flown to Germany. Russia received 8 people in return, including assassin, this time they say it as much, assassin Vadim Krasikov, who had been imprisoned by Germany, and 2 hackers. Oh no, we let them go. And an alleged smuggler with intelligence links. So anyway, just that's the sum total of the article. I just kind of needed to put on the record that Donald Trump spent the end of last week into the weekend praising Putin for all of this and saying he was the winner and all of it because, again, he's on the other side in the great international game, as it were. So let's see. Other things to share with you. Maybe we can sneak in just a little bit of Adam Serwer. It's always worth trying to do that. I thought this was an intriguing headline. Let's take a look at it from The Atlantic. Why Trump can't banish the weirdos? And of course, one answer is he's weirdo in chief, but you suspect that there might be more in Adam's thinking. Whatever Trump says about Project 2025, and that's a big collection of weirdos, his ties to it are undeniable, and I think we all know that and agree. But let's hear the way Adam says it. After years of describing Republicans as dangerous, Democrats seem to have hit a groove with weird. These guys are just weird. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and that's part of the reason for his appeal in the VP sweepstakes, said recently, we are not afraid of weird people, like people you throw flour at or play tubas at, right? We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid. Democrats aren't the only ones who think conservative ideologues are weird. Trump thinks they are too, if weird means extreme and unpopular. And in fact, he's been trying to escape them. The problem is he can't, at least not fully, because they're his people. And of course, he could declare that they're no longer his people, but he's ineffective at all that he does, so trying to escape them isn't going to work either. On Tuesday, the media outlets reported that the former Trump staffer Paul Dans had stepped down as the director of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which created a conservative blueprint for a second Trump administration. Dans left his role following Trump's condemnation of Project 2025 and attempts by the former president to distance himself from its plans. I have no idea who's behind it, and that, of course, may still be true. Trump had said. According to Rolling Stone, Trump has, quote, been privately and very bitterly complaining about the abortion policies laid out by the lengthy Project 2025 manifesto, good word for it, and trashing the Project 2025 linked lunatics, that's a quote, lunatics, who keep demanding unpopular abortion bans and restrictions. Well, what do you know? All right. Well, as a matter of fact, as it turns out, that's all I'm able to read now that I look at it more closely, because it is, of course, paywalled, and it's another one of those places I can't manage all of the subscriptions that I'd like. But on the other hand, I could probably get a copy of the article through more surreptitious means, but perhaps you can too. Wouldn't be able to finish reading the article to you in its entirety anyway, but, all right, well, I've been bounced from the Internet Archive trying to take a look at this thing, but maybe we can find it a different way. And we can read, perhaps, if we're able to get past the paywall later on in the week. But I thought it would be of interest for you. At the very least, you should take a look at what Adam has to say about this and what information there is. I think it is very interesting and telling. Part of Trump's frustration at being called weird is that, one, it annoys him, but two, he can't defeat it or shed it. Like, there aren't enough people he can fire from his campaign or elsewhere to convince people that the weirdos are gone. And that's in part because Trump is himself, as Walz originally said, old and quite weird. And, so there's no distancing yourself from something that is actually your problem. But in addition, he's surrounded himself with a bunch of weirdos in their own right. And it is interesting that, he views this as, well, it's the other weirdos I got to get rid of. But hey, you're the weirdo, man. So I'm not sure it was ever going to work. And I don't know that he understands that. And there's no explaining it to him. And, if you're not bringing him a yes, he doesn't want to hear it anyway. So, all right. Well, it looks like we might be able to get a fuller accounting of the article that we could share online tomorrow. And perhaps if you don't want to go through the trouble of surreptitiously getting past this because you think Adam Serwer should be fairly compensated for his work, as I do, and yet I can't be the one that always does it. But maybe. But the Atlantic, I don't know, it's a problematic institution. And still, anyway, I guess he could start his own Substack and we could all pay for that instead. Anyway, we'll get to that news and that much and more beginning, well, with the balance of the week. Tomorrow, Tuesday, perhaps we'll have Joan McCarter able to join us as well, although things are getting busy and heating up for election coverage over at Daily Kos, no doubt about it. But let's say you want more and you want more right now. Why not stay tuned, as you should, every day for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy right after this here on Netroots Radio. If you're listening to us live, just stay tuned and hear what Justice has to say.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
I can tell you how it'll start anyway. Attorney General Garland will authorize Special Counsel Smith to argue to overturn crazy-ass Judge Eileen Cannon's wrong-headed decision to dismiss the Pervalago indictment against Trump. Good. Had to be done. You knew it was coming. Now it's official, so we'll have to stay tuned and keep an eye on that as it plays out.